There's an old expression: if you have to ask how much something costs, you can't afford it. Well, that's stupid. We got to know how much these things cost. And one of the biggest questions we get asked all the time is, how much is fabric going to cost me? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you how to understand like all the different costs for managing Microsoft Fabric, the economics of it, and how you can do better to manage in your environment. Now, don't forget to like, subscribe, share this with other people in your organization, because it's a good idea for everyone to get a good understanding of this. Okay, so let's dive right into it. All right, when we talk about economics in Fabric, the first thing that jumps to our mind is, what the heck is this even going to cost me, right? There's three basic areas that we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about licensing, i.e. individual user licensing, like how much per user is this going to cost me, your capacities that you're going to be managing, and then storage, okay? Now, when it comes to licensing, great news. Fabric licensing is totally free. So if you're a data engineer or a data scientist and you get a capacity, F2 or higher, and F2 is the smallest, there's no cost for there's no additional licensing you need in order to do those activities. Big caveat here, though, is on the consumption side for users. When it comes to a Power BI report that users are going to consume, the old licensing rules still apply. So there's three real tiers. There's your pro license user, which allows you to create content in Power BI desktop, upload it into the service, and share it to people who either have a pro license or are a free user on an F64 capacity or higher. There are PPU users, or premium per users. Those are $20 a month. That gets you access to some additional capabilities around larger model sizes, and gets you access to like deployment pipelines and data marts and all that stuff. So that's great for like more advanced teams that need to use it. It also gives you access to the XMLA endpoints. So if you're a team that needs to manage semantic model deployments in lower levels, you don't want to do it on a capacity, you could do that with a PPU license. All right, and then the last one we kind of mentioned already, that's the free user. The free user is going to be just consuming information, but for them to work, they need to be on an F64 or higher capacity, okay? Let's keep going. All right. Now, there are some additional licenses that you might want to at least be aware of, okay? There are paid licenses like Tabular Editor 3 or Reporting Hub. Tabular Editor 3 is like the pro way to manage your semantic models. Like if you're managing semantic models and you're in any kind of size organization where model management is important and model management is really key, and you want to speed up your development, investing in Tabular Editor 3 is 100% worth it. And by the way, I'm not getting paid by any of these companies, so like hit me up if you want to pay me. I'm happy to like be a sponsor for these things, but I'm not a sponsor. All right. Next item is Reporting Hub. One of the big things people really like when it comes to Power BI is you can embed it inside of applications so that your users don't necessarily have to go into Power BI to consume those analytics. Reporting Hub has built out all of the things necessary for that embedded app. So if you're not an app company, or you just don't necessarily want to take the time to build out an embedded app, because it can't, you can stand up a basic one pretty quickly, but if you want like a really detailed one, it can, and like a full featured one, it could take you a year or more to build that all out, okay? Reporting Hub just does that for you, so there's no additional like dev environment, just configuration. And I think the price point on Reporting Hub starts at like $400 a month, and the top line price is like $1,600 or something like that. So like really low cost, relatively speaking, for companies on these things, okay? And then you've got a number of free licenses that are out there. So Tabular Editor 2 is fantastic. If your company can't afford, or you can't get approval on Tabular Editor 3, great. Tabular Editor 2 works really well. We use it for many years. DAX Studio is a great licensing kit that I recommend all of my organizations out there, make sure you have available for users to download and install. It allows you for troubleshooting your DAX, performance tuning, all that good stuff. It's really important. And the last one is BISM or AML Studio, which allows you to manage and deploy your models. Okay, so super useful. Also free licenses, right? So no cost on those things. Now, when we talk about capacities, the great news and one of the big things that Fabric brings is like you do not have to worry about what workload you're running and have to spin up additional capacities. You can just have one capacity that can run any workload. So data engineering to data science to data analytics, whatever it is you're doing, you can combine it all in one. What that means is it simplifies your architecture. Instead of like having to spin up all these different resources, all these different things, all you have to do is spin up your capacities in Fabric and you're off to the races, okay? Now there are a couple different things around capacity type that I want you to be afraid or aware of. Now, really, there's two capacity types. And first is the start stop capacity, which is just your traditional capacity, allows you to spin it up, pause it when you're not in use, and then run and use it, but start it back up again when you are using it. It is fantastic. It's kind of your on-demand solution. Now, keep in mind your capacity has to be on for people to run a query against it or have reports that refresh against it. The capacity has to be on for that. We'll talk more about that in strategies and in the strategy section. Okay. The next section is really the reserve capacities, and that gives you a 41% discount off of running off of the base capacities. It just basically says you're going to have it for a year and you get a 41% discount. What that basically means is it doesn't make a ton of sense to start and stop a capacity if you're going to be using it for at least like I think it's 12 hours a day or 14 hours a day or something like that. Then you might as well just leave it on and reserve the capacity. Why that's important is because there's a concept in Microsoft Fabric called bursting and smoothing that allows you to like borrow from the future compute in order to deal with immediate very large workloads. So if you've got like huge workloads that happen in the morning, that's totally fine. You're not you're only going to have to reserve the compute or the capacities you need for a 24-hour period. You don't really have to worry about anything more than that. And that's what makes the reserve capacity so beneficial, is that concept of bursting and smoothing. Okay, now please note, bursting and smoothing does run on your starting and stopping at capacities. When you pause the capacity, though, any future compute that you've consumed will basically be quote unquote due or will get applied immediately. So like if you turn a capacity on for an hour, but in that hour you use a 24-hour period of compute in that time period, and you pause it at that hour, you'll still get charged for that full day. So just be aware of that. Okay. Now, and then the last big component when it comes to cost is storage. So this is just your typical cloud storage, like literally pennies, right? 2.3 cents per gigabyte per month. So I mean, once you start get to petabytes or zettabytes of data, it starts to be expensive. But anything below that, this is not something to be terribly concerned about. Okay. Now, some of you don't like any charges, but like, okay, I tell you that this is what it's going to cost you. All right. Now, let's talk strategies, because just because you know the cost doesn't mean that it's obvious what strategies should be used. I'm going to say that these strategies came out of a study by the Marquette University MBA program. They did a deep dive study into the consumption patterns of many Fortune 500 companies in order to come up with these different strategies and recommendations. Okay, so number one, this is for your SMB strategy. So if you're a small business, you're just getting up and getting started, there's two components you're going to need. Number one is that F2 capacity. I think it's $280 a month. You're going to use that for a period of time during the day. You're going to automate the stopping and starting of that capacity to run your workloads. But you'll basically turn it on, run all of your loads, load your warehouse, load your lake, load your warehouses, do all that stuff. And then your pro users you're going to schedule your refreshes or even automate your refreshes of all of those imported models. And then when that's done, when you've imported all the data for your pro users, users to come in and read the reports, you can pause your capacity. Okay, so that doesn't mean you have to have that capacity on all day, especially if you're able to do your loads. Like I'm familiar with a number of companies out there that aren't large, right? But they could do all of their loads and processing in an hour for their data engineering work. Then the next hour, they load all of their tabular models and their pro licenses. And after that point in time, they pause their capacity. So their bill's like under $100 a month for their Fabric capacity, and then they're just paying $10 a month per user. Okay, this is a great, like the lowest cost strategy for a complete universal cloud-based data platform I've ever seen. So it's awesome. All right. Now, as we start to scale up, we're going to start to see additional resources and compute start to get consumed, right? So you're going to start to move away from that F2 capacity to like an F2 to an F32 capacity. You're going to start to reserve these capacities so you can make full advantage of your bursting and smoothing. And then you're going to start to look at using premium per user for all of your end users. Now, why are you saying, should I do that? Well, the great thing that the premium per user allows for is it allows for a much larger in-memory model for your consumers, right? In fact, it allows for 100 gigs of in-memory model for them to consume and manage, okay? So for only $20 per user per month, you get the equivalent of, I think it's a $20,000 a month capacity. Right, so like this will last you for a long time. This is a great strategy. In fact, you might stay PPU for quite a bit. Okay. Now, as we move on, as we start to grow in capacity, we're going to start to see okay, hey, we're going to start to actually have like the F64 to that F128 capacities. This is where we start to get to the point where you might not need or you might be able to take advantage of the free user for the people who are consuming information inside your models, but you'll still need at least a pro license, and I'm going to say I recommend a PPU license for people who are consuming information at the lower levels, and even there's some real advantages for consuming it at the higher levels. That PPU, like I said, having that access to a 100 gig model is a big deal because F64 capacities allow for 25 gig models. F128 capacities allow for a 50 gig in-memory model, and it's an F256 that allows for that 100 gig in-memory model to be loaded and managed. Okay, so there's big advantages for PPU at this layer as well. All right. As we start to grow up, we start to get into okay, hey, now we're really going to break this stuff out. We're going to have that. We're going to be approaching just having those F256 capacities just up and running, and that's something that you're going to be using in your organization to manage content that's being consumed by your users. Now, here's where we start to get into breaking out your PPU users as well from your pro users. Now, your PPU users are going to be your hardcore, analytics engineers who are managing larger semantic models and managing enterprise content. They're going to be using PPU for those types of capabilities for that XMLA endpoint down in your dev and test environment with an XMLA endpoint of that 126 or 128. 125 is the wrong number, or the 256 or F256 in production. So that's where the PPU is going to go for those users. Your pro users, though, are going to be the people that aren't managing your enterprise content, but still want to create content inside of Power BI. And so that might actually be a large number of people that you want in your organization to be starting to build and manage their data assets inside of Microsoft Fabric. The big advantage there is you start to get line of sight into what they're doing. So instead of them doing a whole bunch of work and things inside of Access databases or Excel spreadsheets that you can't see, By them doing this stuff out in Power BI with those pro licenses, you get line of sight into those activities. And that's going to give you some real big advantages when it comes to like long term consumption and long term like lineage of your data assets. All right. Now, when you start to get bigger than that, you really fall into like you're going to be doing the same thing with PPU and pro users. But what you're going to run into and see that the most economical capacities that you're going to be working with are those F256 capacities. Okay. So these capacities, you're going to want to start to have many of these capacities. So, or you'll grow to an F256, and then you'll spin up an F64, and then you'll grow it to 256, and you'll keep breaking out at that point in time. Now, you might find in your organization that it's more economical, or that you have some specific reasons for scaling up beyond that F256 capacity. We've just found with that Marquette study that this was the sweet spot when it came to the size of the capacity, the benefit, the features, the happiness of the people, the lower threshold for a number of incidents and issues. When you start going above that, you run into all sorts of other challenges in managing your capacities or workloads. So this is the recommended level that we start talking about as the sweet spot to start doing your breakouts. All right. And that's when we start talking about capacity management, okay? Now, when we're talking capacity management, there's some ones that like jump right off the screen to us. So, an environment breakout. So you have a capacity for dev, have a capacity for test, and have a capacity for production. Now, the great thing about this is your lower environment capacities might be lower capacities, right? Maybe you're using an F2, or maybe you're using an F32, or maybe it is an F64, but your production's an F256, right? But you're going to want to break these things out so you can actually isolate your processes, ensure that your production isn't crashing, that type of a thing. So this type of breakout makes a ton of sense in a lot of companies. You might also even think, when we think about environment, is having a sandbox breakout. So this is your enterprise production workloads are running through dev test prod, but you have just a sandbox where you allow your citizen engineers, your citizen data scientists, or your citizen analysts to do workloads there as well. Okay. Now, the other thing that you might have is in your organization, it might make more sense to break these out by workload. So maybe you've got your data engineers working on a capacity, your analytics are running on a different capacity, and your data science on another. This is a really common breakout strategy that's very successful in companies as well, because that allows for that like F64 for the analytics, for users to come and interact with it, and then lower base capacities for your engineering team. Maybe your engineering team only needs an F16 or an F32, and this is perfectly fine. Or maybe your data science team, they're not using reserve capacities because they only do workloads every once in a while, and so you're going to give them an F64, but they've got it paused 19 days of the month, and they only turn it on 3 days of the month. I don't know. Maybe that's what the workout, or how your organization works, right? So think about how this would work inside your organization, and take the appropriate steps, right? Now, the other big key thing that we might see is organizational breakouts, right? Sales has their capacity because we want to make sure sales is up and running, and they're managing their day-to-day activities with their clients, and you want to make sure that that's up because that's a key part of your organization. Finance, on the other side, wants to be isolated from sales, so that someone in sales can't do something that impacts finance, because that end of month, end of quarter, end of year in finances is a critical time for their data availability. They don't want these other parts of the organization impacting their data loads, impacting their processes, because they have some legal requirements to meet, deadlines for reporting. So you might want to break out by that organization, or same thing with operations. Maybe you have real-time streaming as inside of your organization, and that's part of your manufacturing process. And any type of down time is measured in millions per minute, right? If that's the case, break it out by these different processes, right, or the organizations. And that's really, that's the sum total of all the different breakouts and strategies that people have. I hope you found this useful. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, share this with your friends and family. Did I miss something? I think I got everything inside of here. I'm asked this stuff all of the time, so if you have questions, leave those down below. Happy to answer those questions for you. If not, you have the best day ever. Peace. Baker Tilly Digital combines strategic industry insight and advanced technical expertise to uncover and solve your digital transformation challenges. If you're interested in learning more, check out our website at bakertilly.com/digital.